Hello, fellow freaks, geeks, and normies. Today we're going to be going over all of the Game Awards Game of the Year nominations. We're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive here. And basically what we're going to be doing today is going over, why I think that they were nominated, because I haven't had time to play any or all of these games, I should say. I think the only one I actually did play was Spider-Man 2, but I did light research. Tried not to spoil myself on the story beats or anything like that for any of the other games. But basically, I kind of did go over each one of these, did a little bit of research to see why they may have been nominated and going over things that they did great and maybe going over some of the game's shortcomings as well. So we'll start with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. For all intents and purposes, it does seem better than Breath of the Wild. Even though the novelty of the world is gone, I think the technical achievements pushed it beyond what it did 5 years ago. Even though the story itself was maybe lacking or it wasn't as engaging as Breath of the Wild, I think the story is made up for with the greatness of the Ultra Hand. So going over my brief research of it, it seems like, they really wanted something that's simple and easy to understand, and sometimes that is enough to breed a lot of creativity. So basically, if you can think it will more or less work. You can push A piece with B piece or C piece with X piece, and hopefully it'll all work or it'll all go up in flames. All of the things that are in the world of Tears of the Kingdom are more or less inspired from real life items so that we can intuitively make it work. Like a battery will charge something, a fan will work as a fan, a wheel works as a wheel, and those sorts of things are intuitive enough for us that we can, as humans, just put them all together and make something work. It's even possible to cheese the game, and I think that's what makes it so fun for people, is that they're able to kind of, again, have some sort of player agency to create their own fun, essentially. And if Minecraft is the best-selling game, I think, ever. So, if Minecraft is able to do something like that with such simple mechanics, I think they really took inspiration from something like that, where, you think it, you can build it, you more or less will work, and you can have it work to your advantage. So that's why I think Tears of the Kingdom made it on this list. Next, we're going to go to Super Mario Wonder. This is the first side-scrolling feature in over a decade for Super Mario. Obviously, we had a lot of those 3D world sorts of games, and we actually haven't had a new, side-scrolling Mario in over a decade. Before that was Super Mario Bros. U, which is a remake from the DS version from back in 2006. And then it was finally put on the Wii in 2009 and then the Wii U in 2012. So all in all, it's almost been like 20 years since a new side-scrolling adventure package has been presented to us from Nintendo and from Mario. So from, my brief research on it, it looks like this game essentially subverts your expectations. It throws twists and turns at every moment. Game mechanics are only used like once on every level and never to be seen again. And I think it's kind of like one of those things. For me, the way I kind of equate that to is, it takes our ape brains and gives it that straight dopamine hit, that dopamine injection. It's like doom scrolling, but instead of doom scrolling, it's the opposite, like maybe joy scrolling or something. If you're engaging in every moment like that, you're the person who's actively creating these different game mechanics and putting them all together and making the level work for you, or experiencing the level as something brand new. I think that's exactly like, the opposite of doom scrolling, where you're kind of just, some people scroll through TikTok or Instagram stories or shorts, and it's always just like, not that it could be doomer sort of stuff, but, it's some stuff is fun and you like to watch the fun stuff, and you watch another fun thing and you watch another fun thing. And I think that's kind of like what this game is kind of like. They introduce something brand new and you're just like, oh, that was fun. Let me see if I can play something new. Or I think they say, or their idea is like, okay, here's that new mechanic. Hope you had fun with it. Let's go on to something new. You don't sit on that one idea for too long. And again, it's that dopamine injection every time. Before you know it, you're at the end of the game. So I think that's why Super Mario Wonder made it on this list, is because of that innovation, that sort of subverting expectations. It seems like it is innovative in the sense that it doesn't take one or two core mechanics and create a whole game over it. It's like 1,000 different mechanics that they can make lots of different levels with. It's an awkward way to approach a game, but it seems like it worked. All right, next up we have the Resident Evil 4 remake, or Resident Evil 4 2023, because it's not a remake, it's not a remaster, it's just called Resident Evil 4. So this game takes the successes of Resident Evil 2 and the Resident Evil 3 that were released in the past few years and implements them into arguably the best Resident Evil game to date. So of course it's going to get a Game of the Year nod, just as it did back in 2005. It's still a great game to its core. Aside from the graphical upgrade, there's an overhaul of crafting, changes to treasures and their bonuses, new side quests, different solutions to old puzzles to make it more engaging. There's even new weapons like the crossbow and an AR. And there's, storage options for those new guns. So it gives you, again, a little bit more player agency, a little bit more player flexibility to use what they want to use, rather than, okay, I really like my shotgun and I'm going to try to save all these bullets for my shotgun and my backup is my knife and my pistol and that sort of thing. You have a lot of different options this time around. So while the overarching story stayed the same, the way you got there and the nuggets of information you got along the way fleshed out the story, even with removed areas and bosses. And because of that, with the graphical upgrade and all these different changes, all these things, did make the original product from 2005 a lot better and a lot more engaging. So that's why it made it on this list. Now we have Spider-Man 2. So Spider-Man 2, even though this is the only game I played, I actually feel like it's the weakest game on here. I mean, maybe Resident Evil 4 is quote unquote just as weak as Spider-Man 2 as far as building a case for it, because basically the formula stayed the same as it did from Spider-Man 2018. This time though, you have more suits, you have better puzzles, you don't have to do the whole science, there's still a science thing you have to do here, but it's not as monotonous as the Spider-Man 2018 science puzzle. They even improved the Mary Jane sections, and Venom being voiced by Tony Todd, who is, Candyman is my favorite villain, my favorite horror slasher, whatever person out there. Currently, it used to be Pinhead, but now it's Candyman. I think he's overtaken that. His voice, just like if you have headphones on, just like as he did in Candyman, that voice is just so like, it just like kind of gets under your skin a little bit, and I like that a lot. So his voice was just, it draws you into the character and it draws you into the story and it draws you into everything. For whatever reason, his voice just does that. Tony Todd's voice just does that. The Kraven story arc was good enough. I mean, especially at the climax of his storyline, but Venom stole the show. It was a much better showdown than the Doc Ock fight of 2018, but that might just be the issue. Like Tears of the Kingdom improved and pushed beyond Breath of the Wild, even if the story was lacking. And even if Spider-Man 2 improved on everything that Spider-Man 1 did and Miles Morales did, streamlining button layouts or having more utility and moves, it still feels like it's a minor improvement from what was already great. There's no new gameplay mechanic like the Ultra Hand. There's not anything to its fundamental core of the game itself, has really changed from 2018. So I think that's why, again, it's like not the strongest case for this being Game of the Year. But it is a fun game. It's a fun story to engage in. And I mean, it's just fun to be Spider-Man. All right, now we have Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 1 released back in 2010, and that was great for its time. But unlike Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2 creates a new gameplay mechanic, or at least lets it bloom. I didn't want to get too spoiled on the story at all, but allegedly the writing takes a big step forward, and it's more at the forefront. It's essentially a new gameplay mechanic, or at least a more fleshed out gameplay mechanic, is Alan Wake's actual writing, which, you know, was kind of hinted in the first one, where he has some sort of supernatural power or paranormal power to alter reality based on his words. So I think, again, if I'm going based off the first game and they flesh this one out, from what I read, I can only see how crazy this game can get. As this game is relatively new and I still haven't played it, all I can say from my brief research is that the writing is just like the actual writing of this story is just as great as it was before, has cutting edge visuals and graphics, and the atmosphere is only enhanced because of these two things that have been fleshed out and are basically on top of the industry right now. Now, we have Baldur's Gate 3, who is my personal pick of winning Game of the Year at this year's Game Awards. The main takeaway from this year's nominees for me is that what makes certain games stick out is player agency. It gives us a feeling like we have control over what's happening while still delivering a great story or experience. There are themes from each year, I feel, from the Game Awards. You know, like God of War 1 back in 2018 with player agency kind of creeping in with Red Dead 2 and Monster Hunter World, but we were still on that like, hey, this is a great story. Let's give the awesome story the win. Sekiro won, but there wasn't too much competition. And I think it won purely based out of polish and the mechanics of the game itself. Then 2020 happened with The Last of Us Part 2, which again, it's very heavily story driven. But again, we see those hints of that player agency and player choices, like in Hades, which is the roguelike game, so you kind of get to choose your build sort of thing, as well as Animal Crossing, which obviously in 2020, it's actually surprising that Animal Crossing didn't win given how much time everyone put into Animal Crossing during that time. 2021, we had It Takes Two, winning based on a great story, but it also had creative puzzles that hit like a wave of dopamine for you and your friend after a puzzle solved or it's completed. But with Elden Ring winning last year, I think the current Game of the Year bait, so like, you know, like Oscar bait, the Game of the Year bait is that player agency or player choices or giving the player more control over the outcome or how they get to the end game. I think that, along with an innovative gameplay loop, is kind of like what gives us that sort of Game of the Year vibe now. You know, all these things in lieu of maybe like a more well-told blockbuster story. And although a good story helps, and a bad story will definitely hinder the overall enjoyment of a product like Game of Thrones, I think if you just have a decent enough story, the player agency and choices are what really drive the conversation to what makes this a Game of the Year option. So Baldur's Gate 3 is like a choose your own adventure turned up to 11. It doesn't let go at any point. It creates moments that are hilarious and heartbreaking, and you have full control over each situation. There's a reason why Dungeons and Dragons is still popular to this day, and it's also skyrocketing in popularity. And I think it's because of the current world climate where, you know, obviously there are some real douchebags out there, but a lot of us are working on being better. We're more accepting of people to just like the things that they like, and it's okay to like those things. It's a way to play a character in a way you wouldn't normally live out your normal life. Like maybe in this game you're more courageous, or maybe you're more timid, and it's all fair game, and that's, you know, a story that you get to create. And Baldur's Gate is the foundation of all that stuff, and the game itself, I assume, tells a great story along the way. Otherwise, if it wasn't a good story, it probably wouldn't be on here. But again, great story on top of an awesome gameplay loop and gameplay mechanic and innovation. and what seems like millions of dialogue options, I think that's why Baldur's Gate 3 will win Game of the Year this year. So that's my deep dive into all of this stuff. If you like the content here, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you agree with anything I say. If you disagree, I'd like to hear it all. Who do you think is going to win this year's Game of the Year award? Do you feel like anybody was snubbed? Let me know in the comments. And with that, I guess I'll see y'all in the next one.